Welcome to Beyond the Picket Fence podcast, where we have real stories about people pursuing the American dream and beyond. Today, we have a really special show. It's that time of year where interesting things happen, and I'm sure you've heard of haunted houses. Well, our guest today, Rockcliffe Montez, has experienced and has been learning much about that subject alone and the paranormal. Have you just ever thought that the noise really wasn't a noise? The brush across your shoulder was something else? Or maybe that you do have somebody else living in your house? We're going to explore that during this show, and I'm so excited to have our guest with us today. So, Rockcliffe, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hi, and thank you for inviting me on the show, and it's going to be a fun time. My name is Rockcliffe Montez, and I am a man of many hats. I wear a lot of hats, but most definitely one of them is paranormal investigation and just the unknown. Also, cryptids and like cryptozoological endeavors as well. You know, we started, when I say we, it's me and my mom, who's no longer with us. She passed away about 4 years ago. But when I was little, I lived in a haunted house that my parents moved into out in the hill country in Texas, and, right outside of San Antonio. And we lived there, and anything and everything cliche in scary movies that could happen with a poltergeist haunting happened in that house. And since then, we were super interested. And then when all these shows came along and equipment was more readily available, we delved in and created a team and have been all over the country, from Tombstone and Waverly Hills to Pensacola, and of course San Antonio, where I used to live up until 5 months ago. And we have just looked into the paranormal. We come from a Hispanic family, which folklore is a big part of the culture and super steeped into it as well. So all in all, we just kind of born to do it. And we started self-teaching. My mom always used to say books are our friends, and a lot of reading, a lot of investigating, a lot of going into known places that were haunted. And yeah, that's where we're at right now.
You mean to tell me there really is a Ghostbusters?
There is. In fact, in the early 2000s, I think the country has blew up with a lot of people doing kind of the same thing. It's a very specified field. Yes, there's parapsychology degrees, but there's no degrees per se to do this. You need your wit, and you need technical savvy, and you need a belief, or at least a want to believe. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, sure, there is real life Ghostbusters.
Well, I have to ask you, because this is so interesting. You said you lived in a haunted house. So tell us what made you a believer of that, and why did you and your mom come to this conclusion?
Well, I think my family, my mom, my father, and my siblings always had a belief in it. But when we moved from the house that I was brought home from the hospital to, and I was about 5 or 6, they bought a new house. With the sale of their house, they bought a lot of antiques and put it in, the new house. But I believe it was a kind of a perfect storm. Later on, learning, I believe that it was a perfect storm of bringing in objects, the actual property haunted, as well as the people in our house, which were a lot of adolescents, made it right to have this haunting going on. So there was a lot of things that happened in the house, from lights turning on and off, the animals acting strange, silverware missing, orbs, the doorbell ringing in the middle of the night. And this was the hill country in the 80s. Um, there wasn't a lot of activity out there as far as people wise. But the doorbell would go off at like 3 in the morning. TV would go off and on and switch channels in the middle of the night. And it was one of those new big screens where it was the size of, a small van. But it would turn on and flip channels. Then seeing actual orbs in the air, shadow figures. It started getting a little physical. It was a little darker presence. It lifted a track door off of its track and hit my sister on the head and giving her stitches, where that track door was firmly on there. So it was a bunch of different things that gave us that conclusion. In fact, so much so that my parents lost a lot of money and left the house, which I think permeated like our existence from the get-go. But it did so in a way that we had a belief, but then we truly believed. And then we went on from there. Years ticked on, had little experiences here and there, like everybody does, or mostly everybody. And then formed the team, did a bunch of haunts. My mom, unfortunately, got ill and passed away, like I said, about 4 or 5 years ago. And I, have since kind of, I took a break from the paranormal things, but then I started back up again with, I wanted to do a podcast slash vlog on paranormal and cryptid. For those of y'all who don't know what cryptids are, they're anything in the world that is seen that relates to a physical being, such as Bigfoot, Loch Ness, Dogman. Those are all cryptids. So I got real interested in that, and you know, we lived in a haunted house, got interested in all this other things, and then I moved away from San Antonio about 5 months ago, and I actually live in one of Texas's most haunted hotels. That's where I am right now in one of the rooms.
Interesting. So, and you answered one of my questions, which was, when did you decide to leave that haunted house? Because most people, once they figure it out, make it either they're comfortable or they're uncomfortable. Yeah. But how do you define that a house is haunted?
I think it starts getting real personal to, definition of a haunted. There's strict parameters that people feel and see. But I think it's a lot like, religion. It's what you believe that can give you the telltale signs that something is haunted. First and foremost, there's a lot of investigative equipment out there, detection devices. People are making it all the time. In fact, where I live, the owner of the hotel manufactures and develops paranormal equipment. He's an engineer and manufactures and develops them. So there's all this equipment. But what I say when I do a public ghost hunt is your best form of devices is your own feeling. If you're feeling something, sensing something, if you don't feel right in a specific room, if you feeling like Ghostbusters, if you're feeling a feeling of dread in your attic or basement, well, then, listen to that gut. But there's other things, shadows through the corner of your eye, like you said in your intro, feeling touched or goosebumps, disembodied voices. It runs the gambit, but that's why they call it paranormal, right? Because it's not normal. And if you start getting a frequency of things that aren't normal in your house, it might be haunted.
And so you said earlier that you've been on some ghost hunts, as we'll call it. Tell us a little bit about one of those events that stands out the most, and what's a favorite memory from that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. We my sister is a commander in the Navy, and we visited Pensacola, where she was stationed at the time, and got involved with the Pensacola Lighthouse that was on the naval base. And they had legends of ghost hunting, it being haunted. So we started running tours there, did an investigation, had some activity, but we started running tours there. But there was a known, or there is a known entity in that building, especially in one of the basements, that doesn't like, sorry to tell you, it doesn't like blonde females.
Oh, I'm in
And
trouble. I'm not
yeah, you're
going.
trying. And he would tour by tour. We did tours for 3 years there, once a month for 3 years, and like 4 or 5 tours a night, and that was helping to raise funds for the museum that is now on site there at the Pensacola Lighthouse. But one that stands out is it didn't like females who had blonde hair, and I was upstairs doing a hunt with a group, and we had another team member downstairs doing another one, and then my mom was a lead investigator too, and she was in another room, and all of a sudden everything happened at once. It was not a windy day, and the shutters in the lighthouse slammed shut in the room that we were in, and then some people started getting edgy in the other room, and then my mom called me down, and I ran down, and there was a girl on the floor claiming she got slapped, or she had felt like she got slapped, and everything happened at once. And when it did, everybody left the tour, and this was like 40, 50 people. They all left the tour and left. I had to grab the girl and take her outside and get her some fresh air. And she did have like these, and it's always for some reason these like 3 marks that were on her cheek. And we had cameras locked off, and she didn't slap herself. Nobody did, but she just kind of went to the ground. And it was she was stunned for sure. And it took her a while to kind of recover, and finally they left and they drove off. But that's something that sticks in my mind because it was physical as well as
Wow.
metaphysical. Like things happened all at once. And ghost hunting is like fishing. Sometimes you'll catch a lot of things like that all at once, and then sometimes you won't catch anything. It's no pun intended, but it could be a very dead night. Where you spend hours just trying to get a little something, and in a known building that's known to be haunted, and you won't get much. So it's patience, and I believe it's atmospheric, and it's things that happen at the right time.
So, how do you set up for a hunt?
Well, if Ghost Seekers of Texas, which we haven't been super active here of late because there's been a lot of things in my existence, especially moving and all that stuff. But if it's a homestead where somebody feels like they have some activity, you would go in and do a prelim kind of investigation, and then you would also search the background of the house. Just has anything cataclysmic happened on the land or in the house? Deaths, murder, anything like that. And then from there, you get your basis of what they've been experiencing and what a frequency of what they're experiencing. And then you go in with your equipment. Hopefully you have an array of equipment, but sometimes all you need is a tape recorder. And you go in different rooms, and you want to make sure that you don't. Some people like to cleanse, the house, holy water, sage, sweetgrass, lavender, things like that on a metaphysical level. But you want to make sure that you don't do that because you're trying to find out exactly what it is, And it could be a bunch of different forms of haunts too. It's not just in the realm of ghost hunting. There's residual, there's poltergeist, there's active, on and on. So you go in and you set up your equipment, and most of the equipment is infrared because we feel that the full spectrum can capture spirits better than the naked eye. So you use a bunch of infrared and full spectrum cameras and lights. So you turn off all the lights, and you try different ways to see if a spirit would communicate with you.
Wow, have you ever had like a funny ghost? Or has it been what are the ways that you typically see them communicate? You said that shutters or somebody got physical. What are some of the most common?
For me, the most common is audio. um, where you put a recorder out and you silence down, you ask questions, you wait for responses, and you ask more questions. And out of the blue, voices will come out. When we were doing, I'll take for instance, when we were doing at the lighthouse, there was a keeper's quarters in the actual tower where it was known that one of the little girls named Lizzie, who had passed away through yellow fever, um, died in the lighthouse. And so it was a long weekend. It was the last tour of the weekend, having about 300 people go through within the weekend. And there was a small group, about 4 or 5 people, and we were surrounded. And we placed meters and lights and different kinds of spirit boxes, on the ground and all around. And my job is to make sure that every time I speak to spirits or try to contact spirits, I give them a little rundown of what everything is. But this time I was tired. And so we were all in a circle. And I said, Lizzie, if you're here, if you can make that light on the ground flicker. But I didn't specify what light. And there were several lights on the ground, several LED, different components with LED lights. And we all heard in the circle like a grumble, like a right. But when we played back the recording, you hear me go, can you turn the lights? Can you move one of these lights and turn it on? And it's this very specific whisper of a child, and she is saying, what light? Clear as day, Class A EVP, and she's asking what light do we want her to move? And that's an instance where it's kind of funny because she's like, okay, I can do it, but what light do you want? And I didn't do my due diligence, So yeah, it's a super interesting recording because we all heard it, and video to go along with it. Nobody's moving their mouth, but it just comes from the atmosphere. This audibly a grumble that we heard, but with the recorder, it picked up her saying, "What light?"
Rockcliffe, what are these spirits or ghosts?
There's different categories. So there's residual, there's intelligent, and then there is poltergeist, and of course then there's demonic, right? So it depends on your haunt, right? Most of the time there are spirits that are attached to their property or their building or their land or their objects inside, and they don't want to move on. But I believe time is very different in the spirit realm. So 5 minutes to us could be the span of, I don't know, a year to them. So this is just my belief. I believe that time is irrelevant. So when we see ghosts from the 1800s, that's what people say, why are we always seeing ghosts from like the 1800s or the turn of the century? I believe because they're still around, because time is, it's only been 2 hours to them, but it's been 100 years to us. So a lot of times there are spirits that have either unfinished business, or they don't want to move on, or they have yet to get the chance to move on to whatever you believe in, heaven, nirvana, the great beyond, whatever you believe in. There's something that spirits have a way station, I believe, and then they go and they move on. Some spirits move on automatically. My mom, who's very, very into paranormal, as y'all know now, we did everything together. I surely expected her to communicate with me right off the bat, and it's almost been 5 years, and I have yet to even dream of her, really. So I think that she was ready. It was a long cancer battle, and she knew in her convictions and her feelings about the afterlife. And I think when her spirit went on to another realm, she went right on and doesn't need to communicate because she's there, Residual is like an imprint in time. If you have natural substances, which we all live around, either wood or stone or earth, water, Um, if there's quartz deposits or crystals in the ground or running water, that can act as a recorder in time, and it can turn around, and if something cataclysmic happened, it can imprint in time. So I believe that those haunts are the frequency haunts. Like every year on September 4th at midnight, this ghost appears. I believe that that is a residual haunt. So it's not really intelligent. It's more of an imprint in time that's replaying over and over again at a specific date. And of course, demonic is kind of self-explanatory. If you deal with darker forces or there's a darker thing in the atmosphere, then that's gonna happen as well. And then of course, poltergeist is something that is manifested. It means noisy ghost in German, right? But that's something that's manifested in the atmosphere, especially if you have adolescents in the house. They have this adolescent energy that is all over the place. If we ever had brothers or sisters or kids of your own, you know there's specific ages where you're like these kids, and that can manifest into its own energy and its own entity. So there's a lot of things that they could be. It just depends on your type of haunt.
And so if I thought my house was haunted, you're somebody I would call? What prompts somebody to go, I think I have a haunted house? And what do I do about that haunted house?
Well, I guess that's the main question is what is going on, and for you to seek out some help, and then also what do you want to do? Is it bad enough that you want to get rid of it? Is it something that is friendly that you can live with, but you just want to be both simpatico and at peace? Is it something super dark? I think it also believes in what you believe in. You feel it's something super dark, and you are Catholic or in that realm of religion, then you would probably call an exorcist or demonologist. The movie The Conjuring is based on true stories, right? And Ed Warren, who is no longer with us, but he was the only one outside of the Catholic Church that was actually sanctioned to perform exorcisms. And he did them. But if it's something like that, you could turn to your religion. You can turn to like metaphysical religion, Wiccan. There's a lot of things that they say can repel ghosts or our spirits, or at least calm them down. Sage, holy water, burning specific incenses, things like that. So it's all over the place, really, on how you get rid of them. But it depends on the type of haunt and what you feel, or your resolve, but also what you feel you believe in too is a big one.
Are the spirits trapped? Do they need our help? Are they happy where they are? Do we need to do something about them?
I mean, that's the age-old question, right? There is a lot of instances where they are looking for a way to cross over. And maybe, everybody has theories. This is my theory, and that is it goes along with that movie, The Others, with Nicole Kidman. It's an older movie, but I feel that once again, it goes to the time constraints. Something cataclysmic happened, and they're taking a while to figure out, did I just, I don't know, die of a sudden heart attack, right? And they're taking some time, and maybe a light shows in their realm that they need to go to, but they don't want to go to right away because they're working out on what happened, where are they, what's going on. So if they're sitting there for 20 minutes, an hour, and they're like, this to them, they're trying to figure it out, the light is there, maybe they don't cross over, and then things start changing in their environment because that hour or 2 hours or a day in our realm is 25, 30 years, and we start tearing down walls and, building that open floor plan we wanted, and all of a sudden their walls are gone, it's going to take them longer to cross over. And with that being said, maybe the light is there, but they just don't want to cross over. And then there's just because you pass away doesn't make you angelic, right? If you were a jerk face in this realm, you're still going to be a jerk face in that realm. So if you don't want to move and you don't want to follow that light and you want to stay in your home, damn right you're going to stay there. And then all these people are in here and you get more pissed off because you're a jerk face anyway. Well, you're going to start haunting them, and that's where I think where all that comes in for sure.
And I know you've said that you currently are in a haunted hotel. I know San Antonio has a haunted hotel.
Absolutely.
So what's some of those characteristics we find in haunted hotels?
Well, hotels are an amazing center point for activity, especially old hotels. So where I moved to in Jefferson, Texas, the town claims that they have the oldest running hotel, and they are in a fight with none other than the Minger for that distinction. So it depends on how you view it. The hotel here, which is called the Excelsior, that they don't really like to talk about their ghosts there. So we respect that, but people do have a lot of instances when they rent a room. But the Excelsior, I think, was built and opened a few months before the Minger was. And they kind of battle back and forth on who's the oldest haunted hotel, or who's the oldest hotel, at least. Not haunted because they don't like to talk about it, but we're in a very haunted town. But the Minger is super haunted. Reasons why, and I'll go back to your question, but reasons why is there's a lot of people coming in and out, and we never know what happens behind closed doors. There's a lot of knowing our friends here at this hotel. We moved here and we lost a deal on a house, so our friends are nice enough to let us stay here until we build our business, which is kind of in the same vein of paranormal stuff, but we're doing all kinds of things in our new business. But they're nice enough to let us stay here for right now. And we've been here for about 5 months, and the stories they have of what they find in hotel rooms are the types of people in the middle of the night that call the police. And so it's a hotbed. It makes for a very odd transient energy that keeps coming in and out, right? So hotels are super haunted, especially older ones. I mean, a lot of newer ones too, but especially older ones. Been there so long, seen so much. St. Anthony in San Antonio has a legend of the torso guy who the maid opened the door and he was holding a torso and there was blood everywhere, and he jumped out of Peacock Alley and tried to get another hotel. Still don't know who the body parts were of the female that was in the room. There's a lot, that room kind of still exists. I think they shifted rooms and made walls and stuff, but that room still exists. The Emily Morgan, another one, super haunted. They love their ghosts there at the Emily Morgan. They love their ghosts at the Minger. There's great tours downtown that tell you really history of all that's happening in San Antonio. But the hotels are, and then of course in San Antonio, you're in one of the oldest cities and one of the most haunted cities in the country. So much happened, so much death and cataclysm happened downtown with the Alamo and other the Indian Council fight, and there's so many other things that happened there that it's burgeoning with haunted activity. If you want to talk about a property commercial wise, Pat O'Brien's super haunted. That building is super haunted. Did a bunch of investigations there. Got a lot of voices. Got a lot of movement. Yeah.
So has anybody ever? I'm in real estate, and so has anybody just called you and said, "Hey, I bought a house, and nobody told me that there might be a ghost in here, and I think there is." Have you ever gotten that call?
Yeah, we've had some instances, Leon Valley area where people moved in and was fine, but they started feeling some sort of presence that they never did. So it wasn't any of their objects that they brought in, So go in and try, to detect anything. I think on that one we kind of batted zero, but they swore up and down that things would move, the dog would be barking in a specific area, um, shadow figures, voices. Didn't get anything that night, but yeah, for sure, people have moved in and been like, "What have I bought?" And then there's been instances where they moved in and they'll be like, "Yeah, we looked at the address and the history, and a couple of people died in here, and we don't know where." And so it's on and on. Yeah, there's and then there's instances. I had an instance where a lady, her son committed suicide, and she felt that his presence was there, especially in the room where he had overdosed. And when we went to investigate, she was very, very into it. And I didn't know. We investigated everything, didn't find anything, and she was having all sorts of activity. But you sometimes, not all of it's ghosts, right? She had left the room the way he had left it, and he had on his nightstand, he had one of those older bedside clocks that kind of the second hand is like continuous. I don't know if like it just turns and turns and turns, right? Like it doesn't stop. It's just, it was an old like 80s wooden type little snooze button with a not a digital readout, but it was a clock readout, but the second hand would consistently turn. It wouldn't tick, tick. So we went in that room and we investigated a while, and finally our EMF meter, which is electromagnetic field meter, went was pegging high EM, and we located the source of the high EM to the clock. He had depression, and some other things, bipolar, but depression. But high EM consistent makes a thing called a fear cage, right? And so it starts high EM that's penetrating your mind. It starts giving you symptoms of paranoia, hearing things. So I believe that if it was compounded by depression and some other mental issues, and he would lay down every night next to this clock that was pushing EM, I believe even her going into the room and sitting in the room trying to contact him probably was an EM field, not even spiritual, right? So you have to discern those two, and you have to be very careful on doing it, and I didn't want to hurt her by saying that it's probably not your son. It's probably like a fear cage, probably high EM. But I did say, if you need to do anything in this room, get rid of that clock because it's emitting high doses of EM. And, hopefully she listened to me, but we didn't find anything on the paranormal side, but I found something on the physical side that probably was, I'm not an expert, but I feel that it probably had to do something with that as well. So there's instances like that where people call us in San Antonio and it's that, it's also neighborhoods, there's some neighborhoods that have a specific legend or lore attached in San Antonio. The West Side has a lot of these. The West Side has its fair share of an entity called the Hat Man, and he's a dark shadow figure that has a hat, and people see him all the time, mostly children. And I learned of this through reading, but then I also learned of it because my mom saw him when she was 7 or 8. She was walking home from school, and she was crossing one of the bridges downtown there, or on the west side, and she saw this figure at the other side of the bridge. And she said it scared her so much she turned around and took the long way home. And when she got home, her nose was bleeding because she was so scared. And many people have seen the Hat Man in San Antonio, and especially on the west side, Commerce area, where the jail is, kind of all that area. Many people have seen that. So it's not only just houses, but it's neighborhoods too that have this legend and lore to it that holds some water because a lot of people see them.
Interesting. I hadn't heard of him. So,
Yeah.
out of curiosity, does anybody ever have haunted pets?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've never come across one myself, but I have heard uh, many people, after their animal has passed away, they still hear the pitter patter upstairs of the paws, or the bark. Most definitely. Um, I'm not sure if that's spiritual or residual, right? It could just be that constant tick, 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 pitter patter is making an imprint in our natural, wood floors, right? And then it's playing in time, right? I believe a lot of footstep activity, because that's kind of one of the main things that occurs in haunted houses, right? Or haunted buildings is footsteps. And so I believe that these footsteps could be imprints in time. Super haunted business, it's not in business anymore, and it's just been sitting there for a while. But where the Cadillac bar was downtown, did numerous investigations there. Numerous of things happen. I mean, so many things happen. The Rathskeller, or Herman and Sons Lodge, is another one that is consistently haunted and consistently seeing things there. And really all of downtown, all those old neighborhoods, King William. I mean, whether people like to talk about their ghosts or not, I mean, they're there, they're prevalent, especially King William, all the downtown area, East Side, yeah, you name it. We've done a lot of different investigations. Sometimes we've gotten a lot of good stuff. Um, Rarely do we have somebody saying, it's super, super dark and evil, and they want to, be rid of it. It's kind of above my pay grade to get rid of it. You can try. I believe that it needs some sort of spiritual essence to kind of come in. Whether you believe in Santeria or curandera or Catholicism, Christianity, whatever you believe in, I believe it all works. It's what you believe in. There's skeptics out there that don't believe, and that's fine. I mean, rarely do I come across a person that doesn't believe because, or I'll ask them, do you not believe because you've never had anything happen to you, or can just something happen to you and you just don't believe? And very rarely I'll have somebody say, you know what, I wouldn't believe it, I'll just think of it something else, like I just don't believe. But they say 9 out of 10 believe, in some sort of something out there. Like I said, I wholeheartedly believe. I've had so many different instances, even in the last 5 months, especially at this hotel. The owners, it's a very old port city that I live in, Jefferson, and brick streets, a lot of hauntings. But it was a paddle boat, steamboat, port city, that is amazing. And then this building was built in 1853, and it has a lot of activity. And then the owners, who are very into paranormal, have brought in a vast collection. Like when you walk through the halls, there is antiques and oddities everywhere. We have a doll room here that has about 350 dolls that you can rent, stay in, and they're everywhere on the bed, in the ceiling, everywhere. So yeah, we've had our own experiences here too, most definitely. In the last 5 months, it's been fun. It's like
Has there ever been anything that even scared you? Besides your own house with the door?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that started it off. The house had a lot of heavy, oppressive, negative feelings in it. But yeah, I was in Waverly Hills Sanatorium, which is, it was a TB sanatorium for many, many years, especially at the height of the epidemic. I believe one person was dying an hour in there. So they had to create this chute from the top of the hill, because it was sat on a hill, so the wind can kind of come through and give the TB patients fresh air. So they made this chute with a hook and chain system that they would shoot the bodies down this chute down the hill, because too many ambulances or hearses were coming up and taking the bodies right through the front door, that they had to devise this they call it the death chute, right? But I was in there, and we were investigating one night in the whole building, and this entity, we were in a dark, very dark, like large room, and we were walking in it as a little group, and we saw this shadow. It wasn't even a shadow figure, it was like a shadow blob, and it was on the wall, and we all kind of saw it like manifest, and then it crawled really, really quick, and this is like a second or two, really quick, like toward us, and then it like leaped off the wall and like came up and then enveloped back into the darkness, and it was really, really quick, but we all saw it, and yeah, that was unnerving, because it came like right to our face and then came back out, and it was yeah, that was pretty scary. That was pretty scary. Other hunts, I've had instances where people collapse and start writhing around or crying uncontrollably, or sometimes like almost like possession, where they're not themselves and they're talking strange, and you have to kind of usher them out. And once they break that threshold of whatever room we're in, there's one right across the hall from me right now. Room 2 is super, super haunted here at the Jefferson, and it's super heavy. And it's funny, we'll do an experiment. We'll film people when we do a public ghost hunt. We'll film people go in, and there's always a group that gravitates to one spot, and it's a very large room, hotel room. They always gravitate toward one spot in the room, and then when they do, something inevitably happens to them. Crying, getting sick, feeling odd. And so we won't tell them where that spot is, and they'll just naturally gravitate to this one spot in the room. Yeah, so things like that.
Is there
cool.
is there the opposite, like where they go to a spot and they feel good or happy, or it's a good experience rather than a negative one?
Yeah. I think that when you investigate and you do a public ghost hunt where you bring people that are outside that aren't with your team, there are certain cases where they'll feel that, right? But it's not so much, they're not looking for that. They're looking for the spooky, right? So when there's a room like that, they're just like, oh, there's nothing here, and they and they go want to move on to another room. But there's most definitely comforting spirits and entities that are not dark at all. They just want to be around.
How do you
That's
how
the
do
kind
you
of ghost
know how does someone know, let's say they're going to visit a house, if it's haunted or not? Maybe they're wanting to buy a property and they don't want it to be haunted, or they do want it to be haunted. What are some things people can look for or see that can help them make that determination?
I think that if they believe in the technology that we have to try to get evidence, I think that the pendulum can swing both ways. If they walk in, we all have a recorder on our phone, right? So they walk into a house and maybe tell the realtor, hey, we want to feel the house out a little bit. You walk in and you turn on your recorder and set it down on a solid surface and ask a couple of questions. I think that if you come back with some evidence, then that answers your question whether you want it or you don't want it, right? That there's something there. Background, check the history of not only the house in question, but the neighborhood and the location. What is the history? It doesn't matter if it's old or new either, right? Like if it's a new build, there's still haunts that I've encountered in new builds, out in the north, the Stone Oak area, right? It's land. We tend to forget that something happens, even cataclysmic, a car crash where people die or something, and 10 years from now, it's a memory, or it's a faded memory. We don't even know. So things that happen 100, 200 years ago, that's lost to time, right? Or at least the first generation of family that happened to, right? So the land that this place is built on, there's grave sites everywhere. I mean, we were the Wild West, right? So a lot of things have happened to a lot of people. So even if it's a new home, you can use equipment to try to detect. But I think also, once again, your best form of equipment is your own self. You go in a house and it doesn't feel right to you. Maybe it feels right to the next person, but maybe your energy reminds that spirit of somebody they didn't like. Or it depends on what you believe in. If you believe in reincarnation, we run around in the same circles. So maybe that energy, you did something wrong in another life to that other person. Maybe, so I think it's your own intuition too. If you're most definitely feeling something, but I think if you're religious in any way, shape, or form, Christianity, Catholicism, anything like that, even Wiccan, before you move in, have it blessed by a priest. They take a donation, they can come and bless your house, or sage it before you go in. People like salt, like put salt around your domain, so there's a lot of different ways to get a house cleansed for you. Those chimes, those little bell chimes, that if you have a practitioner come in and do that and kind of clear out the house, so there's ways to detect, either technically or just in your gut.
Can you give us an example of, for example, using the recorder right there in your room? Who knows? Maybe something magical happens.
Yeah, sure. We can do it. Let me get the recorder up. All right, this is Rocky, and we are recording. It is 2:42 on, what's the date again? What is the date today, guys?
The 15th.
The 15th of October in room 1. So I am talking right now, and if there's any spirits that are within this room or in this building that would like to chime in and speak with us, you can do it by walking up to this recorder right here that's flashing red, and you can speak with us. And even though we may not hear you right now, we can hear you when we play back this recording. So I will start off real quick by the old-fashioned way, and that is, if there is somebody that would like to come forward and speak with us, can we start off by asking, what is your name? Can you please give us your name, please? And if you're still with us and you answered us, is there any way you can tell us why you still decide to dwell within these walls? Was this your home? Was this a place where you worked? Was this your land? If you can let us know, we would be very grateful. And all we want to do is communicate with you and figure out why you choose to still remain on this plane of existence. And if at any time you want to talk to us, I'll let this recorder keep playing. There you go. We did a little ghost hunt, guys. We'll see if something comes out. And another thing is, you just can't be afraid to talk to them. And to further go upon y'all's question, a lot of the times, if you're having something happen and you don't want it to happen, really first line of defense is just talk to them. Just say, hey, I respect your space. If you can, I live here now though too. You used to live here and you still do, but not in this plane of existence. Can we get along, and I won't bother you and you won't bother me, and I'll try to be respectful of the house that I now live in, or the building that I now live in. And a lot of the times when people are getting a lot of activity, once they just ask, can you please tone it down? You're scaring my children, you're scaring my wife or my husband, it will flatline. So just talk to them, if you happen to have bought a house and there's something in there, just communicate. It also helps if you look for, like I said, something that has happened cataclysmic wise, in the atmosphere in the building. It helps to ask them, and most definitely they can even out sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes.
Can someone clearly tell the difference between the good ones and the bad ones, so you know if you should be afraid or not?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Good ones can be just mischievous, turning on lights, walking, footsteps. The darker entities are ones that you feel scared. You see dark shadows, you see things, you hear voices or growling or movement. You walk into a room and you feel the difference. You feel heavier. The room feels heavier. The room feels darker, even with lights on. And we've all been to a place, and I'm sure you all have, where you'll go into a place and you'll be like, I don't like it in there. It feels weird. It feels funny, and that's kind of where they, or it's a good point that maybe they're dwelling in there.
Are these evil spirits dangerous, or can they be dangerous?
I think, very rarely things have happened where it's physical. But I believe that if you are susceptible to influences, they can do damage. I believe that they can put a strain on sometimes they can put a strain on your relationship. Sometimes they can put a strain on you mentally. Sometimes they, yeah, can physically move things and do stuff to you. They're super rare and they would need a lot of energy. Um, but they did damage to my parents because everybody was scared and they lost a lot of money that kind of followed them financially for a very long time. So that was damage. And I believe that, yeah, I believe that they can, if it's dark enough, and that goes into the realm of something even darker, than just your standard ghost that doesn't want to leave their little bungalow, right? And it also objects are super important. Nowadays, we buy stuff at IKEA, it breaks, put it in the landfill, it's good, right? But you know a carved oak dresser that somebody probably spent a year's worth of pay back in the day, that's something that was coveted. That was something that was super important. That's something that was crafted and they coveted big time. So objects, especially older in nature, are super important.
And so earlier you talked about, things like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, funny thing is I think I did my time with ghosts, right? So I when I first started, I was very much enthusiastic and into spirits, right? I started getting my own mindset on what these things are and what these entities are. It's always exciting to go into a place and investigate, or like I said, we do a private tour here, and it's exciting because new people's energy makes, you never know what the combination of what a spirit may be like. Oh, I like this man's energy here, and it connects, right? But I think I started getting into really a Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and a lot of people don't realize that that's in the cryptid field. There's a thing called Dogman, which is essentially an American version of a werewolf, right? It's just a new fancy name nowadays. They call it Dogman. So Dogman, Bigfoot, different cryptids, different regions have different cryptids. The Mothman, the Bell Witch, the Jersey Devil, right? Those are all cryptids. I started getting into Bigfoot, and in fact, this is why I now live where I live. Right before pandemic, I was going to start a podcast called Lurking for Answers, and it was just going to be a one-man show of me going to different small towns, looking up their cryptids and ghost stories. But I came here because this is in Texas, one of the most Bigfoot sightings in Texas
Wow.
is here in Jefferson and the Caddo Lake area. And I've always had a fascination with Bigfoot and cryptids alike, but Bigfoot is something that I've always had a fascination. And, there's been several sightings all over the country, thousands and thousands of sightings that people have reports on. There's several dedicated podcasts just to that, and I just feel like there is something to that. I know that there's a lot of times where people will stretch the truth or make up stories, but there's thousands and thousands of people from military, police, judges, you name it, that have seen sightings. Different regions will see the same type of Bigfoot. Let's just take, for instance, Texas, they're a little bit more aggressive and look different than the conical head of, Washington State, So I'm not sure what they are. There's a lot of theories, from animal to alien to different dimensions. It crosses the gambit when you get into Bigfoot and cryptid territory, but I think that there's most definitely something to it. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not even sure what I believe. I'm open, but I believe most definitely there's something out there that people are seeing for ages, from Native American, indigenous people having that in their folklore, in their writings, to, Davy Crockett, Crockett State Park here in Texas, in Northeast Texas, Davy Crockett. Apparently there's a documented letter that he sent to his son-in-law stating that he was taking a rest while going through what is now Crockett Forest, and this thing appearing to him and essentially telepathically telling him not to go to the Alamo, and he went anyway. We all know what happens there, but he said that he saw it and then it vanished, and it looked like a giant monkey ape, so I know that there's something there. I mean, I do believe in it, I know other people may not, but totally. Dogman, Ohio area, Wisconsin, Minnesota, some of those swing states. Those are all big into Dogman, and with Dogman, like with Bigfoot, it's a nice thing somewhat, never feeling really threatened with them. People telepathically feel like they just are scared and they want to leave because they don't know what it is, but never a sense of true harm. Dogman, everybody says that it's outright evil, and that it is, every report they just get this feeling of dread, so I'm not sure what it could be, but I'm open to it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun no matter what, right?
Yes.
I mean, we know so much nowadays, especially with these things that are in our pockets all the time, right? These phones, it's always great to have that adventure of trying to uncover what we don't know. It's, to me, it's more fun believing and trying to see what's out there than being a full skeptic. You never know what you might find.
So, how do I know that my house is haunted? And what do I do about it?
Well, I think you'll know, how does one know their house is haunted? I think you would know off the bat, by things happening, textbook things happening within your house. Lights going on and off that you swore you've turned off. Um, a classic case of like silverware missing. Pets acting strange in certain areas, looking at things that aren't there. Um, Feelings, go by your gut. Once again, if you feel like something is heavy or oppressive, for sure. Also, if you're hearing things, footsteps, doors opening, odd noises, when it's not an old house, or even when it is an old house, differentiate what is happening where in the house. Also, you can utilize equipment that you don't have to go online and buy a K2 meter or a REM pod. Even though those are great to have if you want to invest in them, but use your audio recorder. Record some stuff with your audio recorder on your phone. They're just asking outright in the atmosphere if there's anything there, if they have anything to say, what is their name, why are they still there, anything like that. And then also, when you go to sleep at night, hit that recorder. You're probably going to hear a lot of you tussling in bed and you're snoring, but something may come through as well, and just when you do that, though, I do got to say, as boring as it is, when you're doing that, listen to every single second, and any fluctuation within that white noise that's occurring as you're asleep or as you're asking these questions. They come through as whispers sometimes. So listen. But that's what I would do to see if your house is haunted or not. First go with your feelings and then the frequency of what is happening in there that is not normal, that is paranormal. And then from there, try to detect it. And then if you feel like it's too heavy, you want to get rid of them, first thing, just ask. Ask them, hey, can you all calm down? This is my house now. Can you all just chill, and let's live together, but try not to scare my child or my pets or my significant other. Can you, because you're scaring us and we'd like to live peacefully. So all of that, go through. And then if you still feel like you need more, then what do you believe in as religion, or what do you believe in just as metaphysical? If it's a stick of sage that you burn around the house, walking around and doing it in circular motions and just focusing in your mind's eye to ask whatever to either leave or stop, do that. There's several different ways. You don't have to be a demonologist or a exorcist, to do things for yourself. And no matter what, you have your own control. Unless it's something brutally out there that is you're not able to handle, that you need to call in somebody, you have control. You're on this plane of existence and you're living. Unfortunately, they're not, and you're sharing space with them, but you have the right of way.
Rockcliffe, can you tell us a little bit about your business and how people can contact you?
Sure. Once again, I'm a guy with many hats, but we are opening up escape rooms here in Jefferson, Texas, called the Midnight House. So you can look up the Midnight House Jefferson, and that'll come up. We have a bunch of different things, from murder mysteries, ghost hunts, escape rooms, food, anything like that. It's a cool little spot. And then all my pages are blank right now, but I'm going to start up with what I started up 4 years ago when I first came to Jefferson, and that is my podcast. It's called Lurking for Answers. There's a link tree that I sent y'all. It has all of our Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, website. They're all under construction, but now that we're kind of settled in, I'm going to start doing more of that in earnest. And it's just me and my wife behind camera, and it's just me lurking for answers and trying to find out different little towns, go in and ask around and get the folklore and history and haunted history of little places that a lot of people have never been to, and just try to shed light on it.
Do you have an overall message to our audience regarding everything you know about the paranormal that can either make them go at ease or just be excited about it?
Yeah. I think once again, it's all in your belief system. So, that's a big jumping off point. But from there, you know, these are people too. Unless it's a demon, then you got to watch it. But these are people too. For the majority, you rarely run across like a dark force like that. But um, you feel like you can live with them, then talk to them and live with them like we live with everybody else in this big old ball of mud. And if you feel it's something that's negative, then at first try to take it into your own hands and do what you can with what you believe in, because at the end of the day, everything works because we all have a belief system, and those beliefs manifest energy, and that energy transmutes to the other side. So whatever you believe in, do it. And then if that's not working, then go a little step further and try to find an expert. If you want to delve deep, nowadays ghost detecting is not hard. I'm not an expert. I don't think there's any expert in any of these fields. There's stuff online that you can buy equipment and you can detect yourself. Or if you feel that you're not equipped for that or you're too scared, then go out, and there's always a local investigative group that are out there that are hungry and willing to show what they can do and want to help you. So do it that way too. That's about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Missy, I'll let you wrap it up.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you for explaining a little bit more about the haunted houses. I think I learned today that I just need to treat them like a normal person. Say, hey, either I like you or I don't like you. But it's very exciting to learn that, these things do exist. And many times it stems from our belief systems. And next time I think I might hear something, I think I'm turning on my phone recorder.
Absolutely, do it and listen to it all the way through.
Rockcliffe, I can't say thank you enough for sharing your experiences with us today. And hopefully it'll give others some more ghost hunting for themselves and a little bit less paranoia if they do have one.
That's it. Well, it's the veil's getting thinner as of now till October. So if you want to communicate, do so right now. That's what Halloween's all about.
There we go.
Have a good one, guys.
You too. Thank you, Rockcliffe.
Yes.
Very
Thank
much.
you, Rockcliffe.
Happy hunting.